Well, welcome everyone to live from Northwoods and Waters on this chilly January 25th, 2022 day. We are Northwoods and Waters of the St. Croix Heritage Area. Our mission is to promote the natural, cultural, and historic resources of the St. Croix watershed. And you can move the slide, Sashi, just keep on going and we'll go through here. Of course, the St. Croix watershed itself it looks like the map of Africa, I think, and it's about almost 8,000 square miles. And we have people on the call today who are from pretty close to the bottom. Lori, I think you might be the furthest down there, near Stillwater area, and all the way up to Solon Springs, where we have Tom Wayne King, who is our moderator today, and up in Duluth. So we cover a pretty large area. We have two states, of course, Minnesota and Wisconsin, 4 sovereign nations, and then the rest of that you can use in some kind of Trivial Pursuit game. We've got 18 counties and a bunch of watersheds, 114 zip codes, which of course in a rural area means more communities than that, really, and about 12,000 years of human history here. We are you can go ahead, Sashi. We are going to, this particular presentation has about 4 different readers who are passionate about the watershed. Tom Wayne King is our moderator, and Tom will be the one who will introduce each one of our presenters as they come forward. Tom is a writer and a composer, a musician, an entertainer in his own right, and I know you're going to love hearing from him as well as the rest of our presenters. And so with that, I introduce you to Thomas Wayne King.
Well, thank you, Marty, and welcome again to everyone. Really great to have you here. This is fantastic. The evening here, oh, I just lost my full screen. Hold on a moment, folks. Aren't these fun? There we go. Now I've got Marty back on there. This is a wonderful thing to do. Just as Marty said, 12,000 years of human history here. A lot of carpa culture came through this area. When we live right on the St. Croix River here on Upper St. Croix Lake. And the copper that came from northern Ontario and Michigan and Minnesota went on down through here to the Mississippi and down even into Central America. So we have been a highway of the world in this area for thousands of years, and it's just wonderful to celebrate it. And it really is the Northwoods and the waters that draw us all together. So tonight we're going to have Lori Allman, who I'll introduce in just a bit. Gary Bohlhauer will read and speak. Lynn Watson, I believe, is coming in if she's back from skiing. She just heard about this last minute, and so we'll have Lynn, and then I will be last with a few things. And typically we've assigned 5 minutes to everyone, but I'd say let's try to go for 10. How would that be? And maybe Sashi will kind of keep us honest on that. If it's getting near 10, we might end you to have you pull it up within a sentence or so. So, Lori, get ready. You're on deck here. You're up, actually. Lori Allman is a St. Croix Valley-based environmental writer, essayist, and poet. She received a Minnesota Book Award for her creative nonfiction book, Far from Tame, Reflections from the Heart of a Continent, a collection of essays based on ecoregions of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Her essays have been featured in public radio commentaries on NPR and KFAI, and published in numerous anthologies. She has been a course instructor for the Loft Literary Center in Minneapolis and is a founding co-editor of Agate magazine. Her most recent collection of poetry is An Hour from Now. So Lori Allman, take it away. It's all yours.
Well, hello. It's my privilege to be in the company of the other readers here. And thank you to Marty for all her good work on the heritage area. I'm pleased to be a part of this event. Let's see, I'm going to share a number of poems with you tonight. They're all inspired by landscapes in either on the river or in the St. Croix Valley. I have lived and worked in the valley ever since college, which I'm not telling you how long ago that was. I've generally moved my way up from its confluence with the Mississippi And now I'm closer to Marine. So I might be knocking on your door up there in Solon Springs in the years to come. So I'm going to start off with a few poems from the book of poems An Hour From Now, which began with a writer's residency at Bellwind Conservancy in Afton and grew from there, thanks to Noden Press. So I'm going to start with, I think, where a lot of those of us who care about the environment feel these days, which is not pointing fingers, but sharing responsibility, I guess. This was written based on a paddle I was taking down the river. And I felt bad that I seemed to be alarming everything I came across, even though I was trying to be quiet, right? It's called Sorry. Sorry for panicking the posse of whirligigs, for making a heron lift again, unfold the finger bones inside its wings and move downstream, for riffling the water when it had been glass, for setting row on row of turtles toppling from basking places that had been submerged all summer, with September half gone, and only now the river finally dropped below the logs along the shore. Sorry for being the reason why rainstorms have grown more intense, why the seasons are shifting like loose sand, why the sun is not shining near as softly as it did even 50 years ago. So, I don't know, I think, oh, thank you. Poets, writers, lovers of the land gravitate between despair and hope, I think, and we need hope because we're the ones who have to make things better. So we have no choice, no alternative but hope, right? This one came after a very, very cold spell, bitter, bitter cold. It's actually quite cold here today. I don't know, we had a high of 2 below or 2 above. But this was the tail end of a cold spell. And I dedicate this one to Marty Harding because a little bird told me she likes otters. It's called Where Frogs Go in Winter. Head first, torpid, with much chewing and crunching, halos of water spraying all about, winter frogs go down and into this otter. What could be better? Near dusk, where a trout stream runs freely, even blithely after days of -30, freezing only where the water slows in this pool above the falls, an otter on the ice, its body a dark, tapering arc, fine whiskers fanning out from its frosted muzzle, 2 frog legs dangling at sharp angles from its mouth. Pity the frog, and the next, and the next, and the next. Dive after dive, brought up from their winter beds in the sediment. All the unprayed prayers now answered. If I should die before I wake, may I be relished, flesh and bone, where bobbers hang from wires against magenta skies, the setting sun, and I lighting the fire. Oh, thank you. I have to say, I was shocked. It was my first outing after the bitter cold, and I was in the car and I drove over the bridge and I looked and I thought, what is that on the ice? And it was an otter. and it let me get within 20 feet to watch. And I saw it going down and back up, eating frog after frog. And I like frogs, but man, oh man, right? What a sight. So let us all be that frog when we go. Let's see, how am I doing on time? How close am I? Do I have a couple minutes?
Yeah, you're only at like 4 minutes, so you got time. You got time.
Oh, good. All right, I got two more then. This one is called An Hour From Now, and it's the title poem of the collection. And I'd say it's something we've probably all experienced, which is being in a place alone out in this beautiful wild world and wanting it to never end, right? An hour from now. If it were up to me, I'd still be here an hour from now, listening for the next sound, which might be the returning of this shrew, the rustle that wasn't the wind in the leaves after all. I would know each crevice where the nuthatch cached another seed or insect for a leaner time, and with some luck, I'd get to watch that creeper spiral up another couple trees. By then, that patch of blue sky will have moved off to the east or disappeared behind the clouds, and the doe I startled will have calmed enough to browse. But even if this drizzle goes to rain, I don't expect the moss will have grown greener, since there couldn't be a greener green than this. Like me, the fallen log on which I rest would be an hour older, appearing just the same, but changed in subtle ways, its bark rebounding from the weight of passing velvet mites, the lignans in its cells reluctantly relaxing into soil. Are we allowed to grieve the unseen hour? I know it's only the unfolding of an afternoon on a hillside in the Afton woods, except that I've lost track of any boundary between what I am and where I am, which makes the thought of leaving feel absurd, as if a bird would shed a wing and fly with one. I rise to go, wanting to howl in protest, like we did as kids, roaming the neighborhood, always called inside too soon, just when it was getting good. So that's an hour from now. And I've got one more, if I may. Thank you. And this one is dedicated to the St. Croix, was written for the St. Croix, and it goes out to everybody who has worked to preserve it. The whole relay race of people since long ago leading to now that we are now part of. So it's called The Color of a River. Tea, they've said, the color of this river, from tannins in headwater bogs, but instead, I'd call it red. The scarlet red of cardinal flowers peering from the shaded slopes, or that rosy coral of a native brook trout's belly band, thin sliver of life held gently in a hand, and then released again into a cool tributary stream. Or even that near fluorescent orange red of old Jack gone to seed in his pulpit, redefining earth tones from beneath his emerald hood. Fierce yellow, that's the color of this river. The yellow of an eagle's gaze taking our measure from the vantage of a lofty pine, or the comic yellow legs of a small green herons hunting minnows in the shallows of backwater bays, and beyond to unimagined hues of blue, to shorter days of ice beneath a pale winter sky, the glacial blue of pressure ridges, midnight blue of moonlit shadows on the snow, then in spring, that saturated indigo refracted from the wings of buntings just returned, before the blooming phlox in June cast violet upon the shores. It's our own Van Gogh's palette, shining through the night, reflecting stars in azure skies, and shifting with the progress of a painted turtle swimming underwater, stroking out of shadow into light. If this is tea, well, then it's tea with honey. Not one color, but all colors. Not one river, but all the rivers, large and small, every feeder stream and tributary, every temporary watercourse for snowmelt or for rain that remakes and renews this river through our days in wakefulness and sleep, even now, as we speak, and in so doing, somehow remaking and renewing us along the way. Thanks, everybody.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much, Lori. What imagery. Oh my gosh, I've got so many pictures to take with me now in my head. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
All right,
much.
next, Gary Bollhauer is up. Gary Bollhauer is a poet from Duluth, Minnesota, who loves the rivers and wild places of the North Woods. He has published 3 books of poetry: Sacred Times, Timeless Seasons, Marrow, Muscle, Flight, and Naming Rights, and a poetry chapbook, Step Close In, and has poems in several anthologies and journals. He's also published the nonfiction books Choose Wisely, Practical Insights from Spiritual Traditions, and Mountain 10, Climbing the Labyrinth Within, and a children's book, A Common Thirst. So please welcome Gary Bollhauer from Duluth. Gary, take it away.
Thank you so much, Thomas. My first poem is Early Path to the Edge of the river or the edge of the lake. You choose your favorite place. Early path to the edge. Before I make zucchini bread or do the laundry or scour the sink, an early path leads me to a rock on the water's edge. Because this too is my calling, to find and feed this silence inside of comfort and inquiry. The wind is strong, waves clap a raucous rhythm. I focus on the promise of rising, the breaking day beyond the calendar or the alarm clock. Creased horizon hums with luminescence. The feathered breasts of flying clouds are pink and pearl, hovering like ancient mother birds. When the sphere of lustrous radiance hoists itself out of the gray roiling waves, I know I want to live for another day. Even though I didn't have any doubt before its appearance, but I know again there is an edge within me where doubt and dawn, struggle and wonder wins and wins and wins. Here's a real quick one. Choose river. Again, you get to choose your own. So many, as Lori reminded us, tributaries and rivulets and rills. Choose river. If the path you choose is a river and you fill your veins with water and wonder, and your only boundaries are the banks that keep changing and the rocks that you carve with your teeth, where will the story take you? What wild rapids will wake you on the edge of falling and being found? This particular, one of the things that Laurie reminded me of again and again in her poetry is the light and the colors, the play of the light on all of the various colors. This particular, I'm always making plans, wondering how things will turn out tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. I cannot keep the future from intruding, or the past with all its maybes and mistakes, its small grudges and keeping score. Let me begin again with this full breath under this blue circle of sky, in this particular blessing of breeze, in this particular slant of light, in this present world, where the everlasting engine rumbles in the guts of the earth, in the guts of the people, where all the anthems are weary from singing in their own languages, where all the flags of the nations are being tattered by the wind into threads for a new weaving. In this breath, I will forget all the histories, all the impossible utopias. I simply say my name and your name and look into your face, as if we belong to the same family, as if the long evolution of our bodies gives us these particular hands to hold on to each other. The last one here. Give yourself. I think most of us who are on the Zoom today, and so many of us who value the St. Croix and the whole area, are people who love to take the paths. We have our favorite paths, we have our favorite trails. And this poem is a reflection on the path that each of us takes. Give yourself to the path, to each step, each word, each moment, each small mercy, each held hand, each meeting of the eyes. Give yourself, and the way will find you and guide you. You may do your planning, your careful calculations, balance the checkbook, pay the bills, park between the lines. But when the time comes for dancing, listen to the wind. Turn and turn as the music beckons, as the path lures you. Sink to your knees in the center of your calling. Your wounds and all your wild longings. Speak the question at the center of your wisdom. Breathe in the betrayals and the chains. Forgive yourself again. And then stand in the center, all the bold tree of you. Stand at the center of the world. Be anointed, be chosen again for the only work large enough for your heart, for your wonder, for your wandering. Be chosen again to live in that fierce question that sets your heart on fire. Thanks.
Well, that was fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much, Carrie. Sets your heart on fire. The center of the world. Wow. Words to remember. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your talent. And we are going to go now to Lynn Watson. Let's see, Lynn, I know you're in the gallery there somewhere. We'll get Lynn up in just a moment here. And I have a brief introduction, but let's see here. Lynn is a writer from Duluth, Minnesota, and she meets with our St. Croix Writers group in Solon Springs. It's her group as well. It's not just ours. We have a number of excellent writers from all around the area that either meet in person. In fact, next Tuesday, folks, those of you who are St. Croix Writers people, we do meet in person once again next Tuesday. We've been going to a phone audio method lately just because of viral problems, but we're doing the first Tuesday of the month in person at the Solon Springs Community Center, and then we'll be on phone audio the rest of the time. So Lynn is from Duluth, meets with our group in Solon Springs, and she says, I've just finished my first novel, Salmon Run, Alaska, True Lies and Loud Secrets. And she's in that picky process of cleaning it up for beta review. Beta review, folks, mean when you finish a book, you put out about 5 copies or send out 5 digital copies to some folks you can trust who will give you the truth and who won't gloss it over, and will give you honest critiques before you send it off to your agent or off to your publisher. So Lynn is in that very fragile spot there, and it keeps you on edge for a while. So can we, is Lynn up? I don't have her on my screen.
Can you hear me?
There she is. There's Lynn.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Yep, we can hear you. Lynn, I just have to say, Lynn, I've gotten to know over a few years here, and she writes in the greatest realistic detail. It is so interesting, all of the depth of detail. So there you go, just to prime you up for Lynn Watson. Thanks for coming, Lynn.
Thank you, Tom. It's really hard when you listen to poetry or writing, and then you feel like you have to do something, and I just want to just sit here and soak. So, we clap and that kind of ends that little time, and I wish we didn't have to, we could just sort of sit here. So this is the kind of thing where you just sit here. This is called Sauna Queen. Hear the drip, patter, drop of water as the stack on the barrel stove blooms cherry. Sweat erupts, collects, and trickles. It slithers over rosy, glowing bodies. Muscles wound tight with work or worry, relax, uncoil. Candle shadows explore walls of resin-beaded walls. Rinsed, raised steam clouds the parched air. It's Saturday night, sauna night on the river. For inside out clean, the sauna, a Finnish sweat bath, has no equal. Ours is a 6 by 8 foot windowless, hand-scribed, saddle-notched building made of spruce logs. A small door is set low on the sill. Cross the deck and go inside. There is a 55-gallon barrel stove that has an open box welded into the top. This holds lava stones that don't explode when dashed with cold water, like river rocks. The lava stones absorb the heat from the wood stove and help the sauna stay between 150 and 200 degrees. Time spent heating the sauna is figured mathematically. Beginning at 50 degrees air temperature, we figure half an hour startup time. For every 10 degrees cooler, you add 10 minutes to get it cranking. At 40 below, it takes about 3 hours to get the feel of a hot melt. We stoke it up, especially after winter days of wood hauling or skiing. We lug in the water jugs and logs and get the temperature cracking. Crowning our stove is my grandmother's 20-gallon copper wash boiler, filled by well house water jugs. Potpourri steam permeates the air from a tea kettle beside it. Snick, snick, snick. Bare feet start to stick at 20 below or colder on the birthday suit run down the stone path to the sauna. Balance the kids in beach towels. You leap down to the platform and thankfully slip inside the tiny door. Candles flicker in the draft, then dance gold over us in welcome. The plastic baby bathtubs are filled from 5-gallon jugs kept cool on the floor in the corner. Cold first, then hot added from the boiler, so splashes are only lukewarm and don't burn. The kids happily hop in and splash with their toys. Escaped water just evaporates. The kids remain on floor level while the adults boost themselves up on benches. Easing back on the warm logs, everyone starts the luxuriousness of deeply thawing out. The heat gets hot, hotter, hottest. Dippers of water are mixed in basins to be sloshed over blushing skin. The air sizzles as water flicks against the chuffing stove. Candlelight climbs the logs and gets lost in the corners. People are quiet, soft sounds of splashing, breathing. People watching, thinking on the candle flame sway. The stove hunkers down to truly roast us. You never know how cold you have been until you get this warm. Heads begin to feel like swelling balloons or a soap bubble floating away, expanding up into the heat. Drip, patter, drop. Dry heat is easier to take than moist, so these high temperatures are still okay. Eucalyptus oil is thrown onto the lava stones, a sharp smell to focus on the wraparound heat. The candles soften and lean. Gulp a dipper of water, dump the rest on your head. Feel the deliciously cool trickles as it runs down. Get out and scoop a dipper of snow. Add some to the kids' bath water and let them catch it as it melts. Take a loofah or a puppet-shaped washcloth and soap up. Scrub off the dry old dead skin, dirt, and sweat. It feels like taking off a winter coat. Then go outside in a gush of hot air and use the rinsing deck. Slosh with cold water before you step back in to stew. Grab a spruce bough overhead, give it a shake, and baptize your new self with snow. Woo! Hollers out across the night. After 3 or 4 scrubs and rinses, you are see-through clean, like taking a good long run and dissolving into nothingness. Thoughts and problems disappear as all slows down into one long smile. Legs and arm joints feel unglued. Rescue your baby lobsters from their tubs. Wrap them in hot towels hanging from wooden pegs. Cover their heads and run back to the cabin. Pour them a tall glass of cold milk and let them have 2 cookies. Brush their teeth and tuck them into their long johns. Snuggle them in flannel sheets and they'll be out in 5 minutes or less. Run back out, put on a few more chunks to pick the fire up. Slow, hot, adult time. Time to talk, muse, and sit silently, sharing the warmth. A dipper of water flung on the lava rocks elicits billows of teeth-sucking steam. The tight smile strains in the searing, and all tranquility breaks. The heat is suffocating. The wall too close, the roof too squat. The sauna folds in as the candles gutter almost out. A farewell flurry of dippers and buckets of water upended. Rinse water streams down, coursing across the floor and out the drain hole. Rinse, one last drench. Stop down the stack by turning the stove damper. Puff out the candles. Open the door, let the cold air roll, tumbling against the back wall as steam streams out over the header, freezing instantly into hoarfrost. Stoop low, step out, walk into this starry night, clean as rain in a drift of snow.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. All right. Lynn, that was wonderful. Everyone, fantastic. Do we have anyone else who wants to read or come in? I have a few pieces here that I will share with you. Vi, do you have something? Can we let Vi in? And in fact, after I've finished reading, then let's open it up and let everyone discuss if we can. We can have everyone who wants to just unmute. But Viola LaBounty, do you have a piece you'd like to read, Vi?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes. It's called Wild Stallion Day Trip. The Brule River is like a wild stallion. I hear it in the distance as it becomes increasingly louder and nearer. We come to its raging white water mane, flying furiously as she rears up over the rocks in her path. She swirls and turns as the curves of the river draw us closer. The hollow sound of water against aluminum blends with her hoofs stomping wildly through the high water. Sound of water against aluminum blends with her hoofs stomping wildly through the high water, trying to spin us out of control. We ride the water each spring with trepidation, depending on how high the snow was the winter before. The speed of the rapids determine our maneuvers. Paddle hard on the left, you say. I watch for the large rocks ahead. We work in symmetry to avoid capsizing and losing our load. The beauty of the Brule is indescribable. Dense woods surround every turn in luscious shades of green. We drift in areas wide and peaceful along the steady current, hardly using our paddles except to steer. Until once again in the distance we see the gentle ripples again as they begin, then move faster and ever growing into small rapids, then white water turning and folding into it. Water ripples over hidden rocks, then over larger ones and around the ones that could tip us. We take deep breaths and move with skill, letting the fierce white churning take us on further down the Brule. There is none like it. We let the river do the work until finally it eases us out into the smooth drifting again. Each white water more fierce than the one before. The closer we come to the park in Brule, where with careful navigation, we pull into the landing. We bring our canoe to shore. The mighty Lake Superior is the force that drives the Brule on. Many have come to ride the wild stallion, to conquer the river, to stay on top of its surface and follow its lead, to know the excitement of canoeing the Brule. The natural placement of rocks under the water makes the challenge worth the ride. There is a surprise at every turn. As for me, at least in 1978, it was a frightful challenge. I had just recovered from a paralysis, Guillain-Barré syndrome, that January, so was still fragile in body and spirit. I'd been afraid of water from a very young age. So how Bob got me to come to this moment in time and step my foot into an aluminum canoe to ride the Brule, no less, I'll never understand. But I have never regretted it. In fact, as the sand and water moved against the sides and bottom of our hollow metal craft, and Bob shoved us off the landing and stepped in with me, I let out my clenched breath and felt the river's flow lift us up, out, and down this unknown river, through the reeds near the shore and off to the calm water current. I had no choice but to trust him totally, something I would need on down our own river of life. Who would have guessed this fear of water to turn into such a great strength in our lives? However, we have found the Nemacolin to be a much calmer, untouched, beautiful path to travel and camp overnight together.
All right. Thank you. What a wonderful story.
Oh, thank
What
you.
a transition. Wow. That is fantastic.
Thanks.
Anyone else who wants to jump in and read? I've got to view the whole gallery here. I got to click. Thank you, Vi. All right. Well, I will entertain you with a few things here. Sashi, if you would put up those pictures of some of our guests, you'll see there we go. What I wanted to tell you about for a bit tonight, and then I'm going to do a reading for you from one of my books. Incidentally, I write full-time. I retired. I'm a University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire retiree, a professor emeritus in communication disorders and sciences, speech and hearing science, and I was licensed as a speech language pathologist. But I retired at 55 to write full-time, and I had done 2 books prior to my retirement with Simon & Schuster in Boston, and those have had a lot of worldwide traction and done very well. But now I'm on my 13th and 14th book across various topics, and I'm enjoying it a lot. Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys has always had the motto of create all you can while you can. So I've been mostly in the creation mode here, and I will move more to the marketing mode, but nonetheless, things are out there. You can find me on Amazon, and even Walmart has picked up my book. So my gosh, I have made it, folks. Here are a couple of things that I want to talk to you about in just a minute, but even before that, when you live in a 5-acre old growth forest here, this is our forest that came from my great-grandparents who homesteaded here after the Civil War. We are just up on the bank looking out over Upper St. Croix Lake. We have a lot of neighbors. We live in a wonderful neighborhood of humans, but also of a number of critters. And I want to tell you about a few of them tonight. The first one is not pictured here, but during one of the warmer spells about 2 weeks ago, after we'd had a really cold surge, Debbie had gone up to our farm. We raise Icelandic sheep up on the South Range, and looking out over Lake Superior. And I was out sweeping the snow and the water out of the garage. And there was this kind of brown chunk over on one side under one of the Subaru tires where she had backed out. It was a muskrat. There had been a muskrat living in our garage. And she ran over it. We didn't know it was there. It was squashed, and I didn't want to put a picture up of it. It was kind of gory, but how we would get a muskrat into our garage, even though we're up on a hill quite a ways up from the lake, which is fully frozen over, you never know who's going to come to visit. On your left, you will see a big mama snapping turtle who was laying her eggs. We have this quite often in our sandy soil here. The turtles come up along the paved roads or the gravel roads, and then they come up onto our hill and dig in. This was from about 10 years ago. Mama turtle laid her eggs, and then she went back to the lake, and that's part of the story. But the other part of the story, this was 2009, as I recall, within a few days, all of the eggs were dug up and eaten. The shells were all broken because badgers. That was the time of our time here when we had a lot of badgers in the neighborhood. And even some friends who lived a few blocks away had just poured a new slab for a kitchen addition on their house. And the badgers had bored under the slab and were living underneath the new slab with all of that nice soft sand under there. And it was quite a story how they had to get that out. So that's Mama Turtle, whose eggs unfortunately never got to hatch. And the badgers got them, and we could count the shells. There were, I think, 38 that we counted on the ground right up from where she had dug. Then on your right side, the picture of the half lizard. Notice the half lizard. That's a prairie skink, a northern prairie skink. We live in a patch of prairie skinks here. If you go on the Wisconsin DNR site and look up northern prairie skinks, you'll see that there's a kind of a circle of it right in the Solon Springs area, because we have a lot of pine trees and a lot of the conifer effect of drawing heat, but also very sandy soil. And you'll notice this lizard is missing half of its body. He was being eaten by a chipmunk. The chipmunk was on the other rock eating the tail. And I have pictures of it. Again, it's a little gory, but this lizard is still alive, though he's missing his back half there. And those are some things you never know what's going to happen in your St. Croix watershed area. So those are some of our neighbors. And there are more, but I won't go on. What I do want to read to you is several years ago in fact, Tom Wigg and I, we were both copper toppers in Duluth there at First United Methodist for a meditation for one of our events there. I wrote this piece. And interestingly enough, Gary, this is called Center of the World. So I wanted to give another perspective to Center of the World, and our pieces will mesh here. So Center of the World. It's a big world. London and New York are financial centers. Paris, fine art and fine food center. Australia's Great Barrier Reef is a surf center. Tokyo's Ginza, the electronic center. Hollywood, a film center. It goes on with more information and places than we can process in one reading. We can each name places that are our own particular centers of the world, and all these choices, these options, can be bewildering, literally. They can make us long to be wilder in our imaginations and understanding. There is a wilder, simpler, yet grander perspective. Black Elk, prominent spiritual and social leader of the Oglala Lakota Sioux Nation, taught everywhere is the center of the world. He passed along to us much from what we can still learn. In his long life from 1863 to 1950, Black Elk lived in dual cultures, becoming a recognized leader of his nation and in his church. He saw no contradiction of values between cultures, believing the Creator Spirit made all of the world, and that all places on this planet can be and are sacred and special. Acclaimed sites or cities are no more qualified as the center of the world than are any of the other simpler places on Earth, no matter how remote or mundane they seem. Black Elk was right. Here in our ancient deep pine forest or on bright Lake Superior shores, we are neither closer to nor farther from our Creator or from any other center of our world than we are in Santiago or Reykjavik, Manaus, Perth, or at our forests and in our farm. Anywhere and everywhere on the planet, we are at the center of the world, in our Creator's presence, equidistant, without preference. The center of the world for each of us is exactly where we stand in awe and honor of our universe. Pause, reflect, and worship right now. We who especially love the wild often find our life inspirations outside. Our fascinations are the tall pine forests and the deep blue seduction of pristine, clear lakes. Through early morning cold and snow, on starlit frosty nights, gold autumn days, and in full summer sun and winds, we trek our Northland trails and backcountry ways where we overlook Lake Superior. Our shared trail and farmstead adventures are precious and beautiful, each in ways always changing. Caring for our flock of Icelandic sheep draws us outside in all weather at all times, connecting us with deep forests and rolling pastures here in far northwestern Wisconsin. We especially revere Lake Superior, just over the trees and down the hill from our little farm. Superior, the greatest freshwater lake, so large, so blue, so wild, is the panoramic world we view just north of our paddocks. What sights and sounds of true northern boreal forests and of our planet's broadest inland sea await us each day. We are continually awed and humbled by the power and wildness of this world. We are respectful participants in our northern paradise each time we hike or ski hilltops overlooking the big lake. Our bright, shiny northern sea always beckons. We are reminded of Thoreau's words, in wildness is the preservation of the world. His writings influenced the modern environmental movement and echo sentiments expressed by our Indigenous and First Nations leaders for centuries. Their teachings still guide our lives. But be sure to note that Thoreau wrote wildness, not wilderness, as we might be likely to say today. Perhaps he meant what we now understand as that latter term. Maybe he was getting at something else. A measure of wildness in all its meanings and nuances, a wildness of thought, spirit, and place is part of and key to preservation of ourselves and our world. In other words, we each need to conduct ourselves a bit bewildered of the wild, acting as a wild one, to creatively cope with and thrive in our challenging, self-domesticating human societies, as well as in our changing natural environments. Directed, refined bewilderment, I offer, is at the heart of all true human passion and innovation. In both wildness and in wilderness can lie our personal and planetary preservation. We are grateful for our forests, for Lake Superior, for our tough, tenacious sheep, mentors all, the critters we share our place with, for teaching us more each day in every challenging, humbling, sacred Northland year. In this most positive sense, a bit of bewilderment each day is essential to each of our lives throughout all of our years as we each seek to find our own center of the world. Thank you. All right, we have a few minutes to go here. Would want to unmute everyone and we can chat for a bit or Q&A. Can you do that? Yeah, just
Sure.
Everyone, if you want to unmute, and if we can just take turns talking. Whoa, so what do you think, folks? Have you had fun? There's Vi.
There's
What's
also
fun?
a few more things that we have to say just about Northwoods and Waters and everything else
Let's
going
do
on
it.
tonight.
Let's do it.
talk. I'll pull this back up. Okay. So, do you want to talk about it, Marty, or do you want me to talk about it? I can do either.
Sure, I can talk about it. I'm going to, you can see me, right? I'm just seeing the slide. I just want to say that I really so appreciate all of everything you've shared tonight. I feel like I've been like in the presence of the holy, really, through the poetry that you have given us, through your poetic and literary look at this sacred place that we have here. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's just been a lovely time to spend with you. So I forgot to introduce myself in the beginning. I'm the chair of Northwoods and Waters of the St. Croix Heritage Area. And we have our mission, one of our missions is to connect the region. Certainly this program does that. I feel connected with all of you across the watershed and wherever else you are here in this United States. Our next program is going to be, Brian Finstead is going to share with us information about the Grand Footpath and the Northwest Otto Sands Tour. But rather than me talk about it, Brian's online. Brian, are you willing to unmute yourself and just tell us what your talk will be about?
Sure. I wasn't prepared to talk, but I'll just.
I know you weren't. Thank you.
So the way that this really began is the Northwest Sands, which is the area that's outlined there, is an area of sand outwash, but basically where the melting glaciers deposited sand. And it's very drought prone. The sand is very porous. So, rain just sort of filters straight down through the sand. It dries out very easily. And historically, before there was fire prevention, it was frequently swept by wildfire. So it actually was more of a barrens habitat than it was the North Woods that we think of today, which a lot of people don't fully understand. The North Woods sort of sprung up in those areas after fire suppression came into being. Historically, it was swept by fire in some areas as frequently as every 5 years. So some of it would be open barrens, and then other areas would be sort of regeneration of young forest, then burned and regenerate to young forest, but never really maturing. So there's different barrens wildlife areas throughout. There's the Sterling Barrens, there's barrens components to Crux Meadows, the Namakagon Barrens, the Bird Sanctuary, what we call the Douglas County Wildlife Area, the Barnes Barrens and the Makwa Barrens. And those areas were primarily established initially for sharp-tailed grouse habitat. And a lot of those have wildlife areas, not all of them, but most of them have friends groups, and some of them have these little driving tours that you can go around the wildlife area. And there was an initiative to connect the wildlife areas together with a grand auto tour that you could drive the extent of the Northwest Sands. And it really was about learning about the geology and ecology of it. And I joined the board of the Friends of the Bird Sanctuary, which is one of the Barron's habitat groups. And I kind of come from a historical perspective. I've just been a local history geek my whole life, and I'm on the board of the Gordon Wascott Historical Society. And when they initially rolled out this idea, it just struck me that there's a very early Native American footpath that went from Chequamegon Bay down to the St. Croix, that later sort of, as settlement came into the area, European settlement, it was improved into a wagon road. And then when Bayfield was developed, it actually became a stagecoach route briefly in the 1860s and 1870s before the railroads. And they were following the sand barrens because the sand barrens were high, dry, and open land. So it was land that they didn't have to clear, they didn't have swamps. It was just this really natural conduit of travel, from, time beyond what anybody knows up until the railroads. There was sort of this travel pathway that went along there. So I sort of advocated that, well, why don't we include the historical and cultural aspects to this also? So this is all still percolating, just, getting sort of formed and going, but the idea is to create an auto tour across the Northwest Sands, that there'd be points of interest along the way that you can stop that might be historical, cultural, geological, ecological, but just tell the story of the Northwest Sands. And it follows really sort of nitty-gritty back roads that you wouldn't get into in other ways that you wouldn't typically go to. So it's somewhat different from like what's the other term? It's not a byway. A byway is more highways. This is really getting into the back roads. So it's kind of interesting and it's fun and it connects communities. And I've been meeting people across the whole trajectory of it. And the bulk of it is within the St. Croix watershed. The northern part is Lake Superior, but most of this is within the St. Croix Namakagon watersheds.
So Bryant is a wonderful storyteller and an amazing historian. And so this won't be the open mic kind of format, but we encourage you to join us for this presentation so we can learn more about this and figure out how we can both enjoy this and support everyone who's doing this great work too. Thank you for jumping in spontaneously, Brian.
Sure.
And this is an event going on right after this at 7 p.m. Michael Laughing Fox Charlotte, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but that's my best bet, is a poet, storyteller, and he also plays the flute and drums. He's a member of the Red Cliff Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa, which is in northern Wisconsin. And this is the first of 4 events that the Wisconsin Historical Society is putting on. And so it'll be every Tuesday night from now until February 15th. So you can either scan that QR code to get right to the page, or I just put a link into the chat, and so you can see all of the upcoming events. But looks like a lot of fun. If you like this, you'll probably like that.
Absolutely. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there for the next Tuesday nights.
Yeah.
It's a really great program they put together. Thank you, Sashi. So another way we connect the St. Croix River watershed is through links. It is a free online guide to in-person or virtual events. So encourage you, if you want to find out what's happening in the rest of the watershed, the events that are happening there, go to links. So that's one of the things we do. We also have storytellers. If you are all storytellers, please consider joining us as a storyteller. We have that, if you go to the next slide, Sashi, I think that's what is here. So northwoodsandwaters.org is our website. You can find a storyteller there if you have an organization, or register as a storyteller. And our storytellers use all types of media to tell their stories. So please help us build this so that we can connect our storytellers with audience who want to hear your stories. And then please stay in touch through our website, on Facebook or Instagram, or by email. We want to hear from you. Our goal eventually is to have this whole region established as a national heritage area. That's going to take every last one of us advocating for this. And so you help us further that mission by bringing audiences to hear your words, and we have an opportunity just to tell people that that's an important initiative that's taking place also. So do you have any more to share with our group, Tom?
I think we've had a wonderful evening here, Marty. Thank you for pulling this together. Thank you, everyone, Sashi, and Brian, and everyone who's behind the scenes there, Lynn and others. I know there are some other NWW people out there lurking. So thank you, everyone. I think
All right, thank you.
we'll do the open mic again. When is the next one, Sashi?
In April, so keep your eyes out for that.
April 23rd, is that right?
Yes, I'm gonna check the calendar. Whatever that.
Every Tuesday night, we will, every
Yeah.
fourth Tuesday night, we will have
Fourth
some kind of
Tuesday, yeah.
presentation,
Mhm.
like Brian coming up. Sharon Day, who's an Ojibwe elder, will talk about the Nibby Walk that we did on behalf of the water. We have a video that we're going to be rolling out and being able to share that with you. That should happen in March, I would think. That would be our next program, and then open mic in April. So mark your fourth Tuesday down and we will be with you again. Tom has a comment.
Not a comment, a question. I wonder if, could you possibly send out an email with those links that were on the various pages previously?
Oh, the ones I just put in chat? Sure. Or the other ones, sure.
Yeah,
Happy to do that.
because I didn't have time to get them down, and
Oh, really?
yeah,
Yes,
Yeah.
that would be great. Thank
we'll
you.
send you an email.
Yeah.
Have a great time.
Okay.
Have dinner. Join us for the Native American program if you can. And if
Yeah.
not, we'll see you in a month.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you to all the readers. It was
Bye-bye.
wonderful.
Take care.